In January, Samsung did it again and launched the S24 in two variants, Exynos for global users and Snapdragon for North America and China. Even though the Snapdragon version has a better battery life, both versions are among the best compact flagships of the year. I am Mo and I'll do a final review of S24 in a beautiful city of Hamburg on a sunny autumn day. I will spend a day comparing the battery life, camera, and performance using the app that I wrote. To test the phones, I also did something different this time. I will put both phones on 4G throughout the test instead of 5G and also put both phones on light performance mode, since many of you requested this specific test. I'll also try to run programs like Adobe Lightroom to test performance instead of benchmarks. And finally, I'll compare the cameras of the two, which surprisingly are somewhat different. The day already started with the Galaxy S24 Snapdragon on the right side having 3% more battery than Exynos on the left side. I charged both of them 100% 12 hours ago, and Snapdragon lost 8% overnight while Exynos lost 11%, which is not a great start for Exynos. After having some morning tea, I shot pictures of the balcony flowers with both phones. In the first shot, the Snapdragon on the right side did a better job with dynamic range on the windows in the background, but in the second shot, both came out with a nice dynamic range and were vivid. We then went outside to take a bus to go from Gießen to Blankenese. The weather is sunny and I'm excited to show you the town. Galaxy S24 has 3 cameras, an ultra-wide, a wide, and a telephoto lens. Both Exynos and Snapdragon versions have the exact same camera capabilities, including 8K video recording. I took this video in that mode, but I usually do 4K 30 frames per second. What is different between them though is color science. Some of the image and video processing happens on the nodes on the chipset, and as you can see here, their Snapdragon white balance is warmer, while Exynos colors are generally colder with more contrast. It comes down a bit to your preference, which one you like more. We arrived at Blankenese to go for brunch in a nice and cozy place. They have amazing bread here. Another significant difference I noticed when taking videos with a Snapdragon is that sometimes the shadows are lifted more, resulting in a more cinematic image. Again, it is nothing inherently better, it is just different than Exynos. Not surprisingly, this makes the S24 Snapdragon colors much closer to S24 Ultra, whereas the S24 and S24 Plus Exynos are more similar to A55 and other phones with Exynos processors. Of course, I love the S24's screen size. I like it more than the Ultra. It is one of the only affordable small flagships right now, considering that the Pixel 9 is heavier and larger this year. Also, the size of the phone allows it to be used one-handed. Talking about AI, the only feature I use daily is the circle to search. It is handy to search for places or flowers that you don't know the name of. Right now, the S24 Exynos on the left side has 83% battery left, while the S24 Snapdragon has 87% battery left. Regarding the durability of the frame, I didn't always use a case on it and I dropped it a few times. There are a couple of dents on the frame on the Exynos version and I do recommend using a case. We went to a botanical garden nearby to check the camera and the video quality of the phones. In the last video, folks in the comment section mentioned that the Snapdragon has better stabilization of the telephoto lens. I can confirm this after further test. This also affects the quality of the photo, even though it is not super noticeable. That said, it is super nice that the telephoto lens is available. This is the lens that I used the most on any phone, and one of the reasons I prefer the S24 over the iPhone 16 and Pixel 9. During daylight, the lens is pretty sharp with a great amount of detail, and the colors are vivid but not overly saturated. As mentioned before, one of the main differences between the processors is how they handle shadows. A Snapdragon lifts the shadows a lot, which can sometimes result in a gray effect. I also noticed many people complaining about this effect on the S24 Ultra. Here I found the video on Exynos better. I also quickly checked the telephoto lens shake on the S24 Exynos, and indeed, the shake is more visible on it compared to the S24 Snapdragon, as you can see here. I also see that the quality of the picture on the S24 Snapdragon is better here, as the highlights are captured better, and the fruit is not overexposed. As any proper Asian person would do, we then decided to pick some fruits on the ground and bring them home to make some jam. Let me know if you would have done the same in the comments. If you encounter the problem of the pictures being overexposed, you can simply turn the exposure down by clicking on the place you want to expose it and bring the slider down. The colors that S24 takes are nice looking, I would say. It is of course slightly saturated and more vivid than a normal camera would do, but I don't find it necessarily excessive. I do notice it is more saturated than the iPhone 16 and Pixel 9 though. As previously observed, I feel that the S24 Exynos overexposes slightly more compared to a Snapdragon. You can again observe this in this picture here. For the portrait photo, the S24 Snapdragon on the left side did lift the shadows on my face slightly more, and the one on Exynos has more contrast. In general, I would say both phones take great pictures on all three lenses, and I'm super content with the result whenever I use this phone instead of the S24 Ultra. We departed from the garden and went to a local farmer's market. Christmas is just around the corner, and here in Germany, there are super lovely Christmas markets being set up every year, and folks are already preparing for it. Both phones have great portrait video mode, which I often use when I do vlogging. It creates a shallow depth for your subject and blurs everything else in the background. Usually, you need a real camera with a fast lens to be able to create a similar shot, but nowadays you can do the same easily with a compact flagship phone. Also, a tip for videography with S24 or any Samsung phone. You can always lock your exposure. This is extremely useful if you are taking a video of the scene that shifts lights. Here, I lock the exposure to the last scene, which is the sky. Here is the result. On the left side with Exynos, I did not lock the exposure, while on the right side with the Snapdragon, I did lock the exposure in the video. Therefore, it does not have any exposure shifts, which makes the video look more professional. We went back to Blankenese, a posh neighborhood in Hamburg, and right now Exynos has 60% battery left, while the Snapdragon has 65%. To test the performance of the phones in light mode, I tried to import the same number of pictures on both phones in Lightroom. Both phones imported the photos at the same time, but Exynos was a degree hotter than Snapdragon. Then I tried to export the same amount of pictures in Adobe Lightroom, and this time, Exynos actually did it faster on the light performance mode, but again, it did get a couple of degrees Celsius hotter than a Snapdragon. After the test, Exynos was at 46 and Snapdragon had 51% battery left, which is almost 2 hours of screen time. We walked through the street of Blankenese, which is famous for its beautiful houses and the view over Elbe River. Usually when it comes to taking videos or shooting photos, I use the 3x telephoto lens because it gives a more realistic view compared to the wide lens. I use the wide lens when I want to give a wider view and include more subjects, including the sky in the frame. The main lens of the S24 is 24mm wide lens, which is typical on a smartphone these days, and the quality in daylight is quite good. The colors are of course a bit saturated and brighter and have characteristics of a mobile phone. I took a video of the same scene using my Sony camera, which as you can see right now is a bit less vivid and more realistic colors of the scene. And once again, I want to tell you how important the telephoto lens is, at least for me. Here I'm using the 3x telephoto lens to capture this epic fight in the skies between a hawk and a group of crows, which is difficult to even see with the eyes, let alone capture it with the main lens. For indoor photos and their quality, I went inside this church in Blankenese to take some photos and videos. Even though the sensor size on the S24 is smaller than S24 Ultra, I rarely find it a problem when taking videos or shooting pictures indoors. The pictures that comes out of the not so bright environment are also great. The colors are nice and vivid. Again, in this last picture, I see that the S24 Exynos lifted the shadows more than the S24 Snapdragon. That said, both of them lift shadows to an extent. For example, I took this video with my normal Sony camera and the light is in a realistic sunset one. If you look at the pictures that the phones took, the shadows are lifted and the picture has more exposure, which is how any smartphone these days process pictures. We then took the bus to get back home. Then I played some YouTube at home to drain the batteries a bit more. After an hour of playing YouTube, the S24 Snapdragon had 8% more battery left. Here at night, I took a video, and the S24 Exynos sky looks nicer with more contrast. I should say the sky was not this contrasty though, but I understand most people probably prefer this style. I took this incredible video with 3x telephoto lens on S24 Snapdragon. We were invited for dinner at a neighbor's home where she cooked a delicious pumpkin soup, and S24 Snapdragon took great videos of the scene. When we returned, the Snapdragon had 9% more battery and both had around 2 hours and 45 minutes of screen on time. I let both phones upload all the pictures on the cloud, and when they were finished, the S24 Exynos had 19% battery, while the S24 Snapdragon had 29% battery left. The last part of the test was on Wi-Fi, but the rest was on 4G in light performance mode. There's a rumor that Samsung will release S25 series with a Snapdragon Elite. The 3nm Exynos 2500 yield does not seem good enough to be mass-produced. But again, it is just a rumor now. Let's see what the next year will bring us, but at least this year it seems that S24 Snapdragon is a better deal than the Exynos. That said, S24 Exynos still had some competitive edge over the iPhone 16. If you want to compare the S24 versus the iPhone 16 in a day in Vienna, watch this video next. Thanks for tuning in to TechMo, and I will see you in the next one.